Good morning, friends, or should I say, fellow citizens of the Gender Republic. This week in the news, Harvard discriminates for diversity, Washington State gets punished for curiosity, and a pediatrician escapes Texas justice by hopping on the Oregon Trail. Let's start with Harvard. The nation's most expensive virtue signaling summer camp just postponed its Advancing Excellence in Transgender Health. Not because of new evidence, but because it gave out scholarships based on identity. So if you check the right box, you got in for free. If not, you're paying $650 for this course. Meanwhile, over at Washington State University, the crime wasn't exclusion, it was inclusion. The university's medical school granted CME accreditation to the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine for a continuing education series on evidence-based care for gender dysphoric youth. That means that physicians can earn official credit for reviewing actual data. You would think that would be celebrated, but nope, it wasn't. Immediately, activists started screaming hate group because apparently open debate and evidence-based healthcare is the new form of violence. So Harvard folded for being too inclusive the wrong way. WSU got attacked for being inclusive the right way. And this is kind of like watching two sides of the same coin argue about who's more oppressed by gravity. Excellent. Speaking of gravity, the numbers are finally coming down. Political scientist Eric Kaufman announced that trans identification is in free fall, which sounds dramatic until you realize he just counted fewer college students calling themselves non-binary. That's not a moral revolution, it's a change in survey wording. Jean Twenge, queen of generational data, said that numbers are leveling off, not dropping off. So TikTok trends fade, but ideology lingers like a bad Axe body spray. Down in Texas, Dr. May Lau surrendered her medical license after attorney Ken Paxton accused her not of just prescribing hormones to minors in violation of SB 14, but fraudulent billing and falsifying records to hide that she kept prescribing after the law went into effect. No worries, though, because she packed her bags and just relocated to Oregon, where shield laws protect doctors like her from accountability. So basically, we now have a witness protection program for gender doctors. Excellent. I'm sorry. In Kansas, two teens and their parents are suing the state over its 2023 Do No Harm Act, which bans puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for minors. It will be the first major post-Scrimeti trial, and Kansas deserves a fucking medal just for still being willing to go to court about biology. And finally, my absolute favorite story of this week, Senator Scott Wiener of California hosted a pumpkin carving event in San Francisco, which was interrupted by protesters dressed as chickens. They clucked at him for refusing to meet with women advocating for sex-based rights. And ladies, I cannot tell you how much I love you for this. You are the heroes we have been waiting for. So what did we learn this week? Harvard can't tell inclusion from discrimination. Big surprise there. Doctors can't tell medicine from magic. And Scott Wiener can't tell poultry from protest because he's an idiot. Happy Halloween, though honestly, I can't tell anymore which costumes are for the holiday and which are just people showing up as themselves. This has been your Genderland news where reality still hasn't gotten its diversity waiver. On to the show.
Good morning. Welcome to this Halloween edition of Informed Dissent. I'm Jamie Reed, a whistleblower from a pediatric gender center. This is kind of my slacker 90s costume. I'm not going to go rob a bank like Cori thought. Do you want to introduce yourself, Cori?
Sure, I am Cori Cohn. I am a speaker on what it is like to be a person of trans experience and then finding yourself in this sort of Kafka-esque situation of surviving as a person who used to pretend to be one sex and now has to try to figure out how to go live as your natal sex.
I am Lauren, co-director of the LGB Courage Coalition, and I was told I am not allowed to use my Ninja Turtle costume for this podcast?
I think we should have one exception. Maybe we could limit it to 10 seconds.
It's really creepy.
I think it's great.
Which Ninja Turtle is this?
Leonardo? God, don't you know anything?
So creepy.
Well,
Okay, and I'm going to give a fair warning.
That's
I
15 seconds.
Yeah, you can take it off now. I'm in the living room, and and there is a bed that's going to be delivered, and they give you the like 4-hour window of opportunity, and that 4-hour window started 6 minutes ago. So who knows? It might come, and then I'll just say goodbye. I'll just log off, and you all can figure out how to survive the end without me. I'm just going to introduce our topic, and then we can go from there. So this is out of Britain. Britain's NHS, which is their National Health Service, has just published the following: a call for evidence for a clinical pathway for adults who have previously undergone a gendered transition and wish to detransition. They are going to develop a clinical pathway. As part of this, they're seeking input from healthcare professionals, relevant professional organizations, to help identify the key elements of a national service for this pathway. And they welcome the voluntary involvement of anyone who is a detransitioner. Their exact phrasing is individuals with lived experience who wish to be involved in this work as it develops can register their interest. I found this good news. I feel like, again, they're kind of a few years ahead of us. Lauren's first reaction was about age.
Yeah, like why is this just adults? I mean, what about kids that, I mean, because we are starting to we're transitioning children, so one could imagine that there will be people who are under 18 who would want to detransition and would need these services.
Well, I have some let's go back for a little bit. So last year I gave testimony in Texas on a bill that would require insurers that if they provided transition related services, that they would have to provide other forms of continuing medical coverages, including services that are related to detransition. A problem with the framing around the term detransition is it implies that things can be undone that have been done. That's not even necessarily the case or necessarily true, especially if you've had things removed, they cannot be added back. Simulations maybe can, but in fact, parts that are taken away cannot be re-added. And that includes if you have your gonads, right? Oophorectomy or orchiectomy. You can have replacement therapy, but you can't get those parts back. So I have a little bit of lack of ease thinking about framing this around detransition when, in fact, these medical interventions cause particular categories of bodily harm, and there's not a simplistic framing around how do we help people maintain their health after they've had these unhealthy things performed on them, because there's going to be people who don't see themselves as being in that detransition category who nevertheless need that type of health care.
Right. I mean, people who are quote unquote happy in transition they are also having abysmal health care. Am I correct? I mean,
It's mixed.
Okay.
It can be abysmal. There's just no standard. Even though there's something called WPATH, there's actually no standards for how to provide healthcare to people who've been medicalized.
I need to pause for a moment. Cori, you have done such a spectacular job of speaking through without even any change in your intonation at all. The fact that your cat has bit you, I think, scratched you and has gone in and out of your lap, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Rather savagely, my hands are covered with
Oh my
mark
God.
bites.
Who is the cat?
This is Dorian Gray.
Look at his face.
Beautiful, and has a sibling,
His sibling is Ichabod Crane.
and they are new to your life.
They are
How are they settling in?
pretty good. They are brothers from the same litter. They just had their birthday, 1 year birthday on Sunday. So they are adolescent cats. This is the perfect time to start them on puberty blockers if I want them to remain kittens for the rest of their lives. Failing that, I might just get them neutered. And then in which case they'll need a specialized form of continual care for the medicalized harm that I'm going to be inflicting on them.
Okay, so pivoting back to the topic at hand, is part of this around the word detransition? Is there a different, like, do you want the National Health Service to use a different word?
Well, I am worried about formalizing inaccurate frames. I don't know a better way of putting it. I don't think detransition is a helpful frame for a medical context. I'm not even sure it's a helpful frame for people who are departing from having a trans identity, because as we may have seen in the over and over again, but most recently in the aftermath of the GenSpect conference, there was a photo of that Laura Becker published
yeah.
on X that had a variety of people who've had trans experiences, perhaps, on the same stage in the same photograph that said X-trans. And some of these people claim that their trans experience is that they had a identity that you might say, I'm not like the other boys, or I'm not like the other girls, I'm different, and also had taken birth control, and that's described as a trans experience, all the way to people who've had cross-sex hormones and permanent surgical interventions. And this raised a big debate afterwards of who is detransitioned. And I don't use the term myself. I sort of tongue-in-cheek say I'm a gentleman of trans experience, but it's not a black and white. There are going to be all sorts of ranges of experiences of people who've medicalized and have had all sorts of social integrations based on complete or partial transitioned states. And to say, well, there's a specialized form of healthcare for people who have made the conscious decision not to identify as trans anymore. Well, who does that encompass? What is detransition? So I'm just scared about, not even scared, I'm reluctant to endorse anything that adopts that detransition framing without there really being a clear understanding of what that means, and in such a way that might exclude people who need those services but don't want to adopt that label.
So I want to kind of just walk through, medically speaking, though, what a service like this could be offering in terms of interventions.
Yeah.
So you would have individuals who were potentially puberty blocked on a
Yes.
GnRH agonist, Some of which who maybe never went on to cross-sex hormone. That's probably a very tiny cohort, but a small cohort
Yep.
of individuals on a GnRH agonist. Um, the things that immediately come to mind, I believe that they should be offered bone health analysis. So analysis of what is their bone health at, if they need vitamin D supplementation, if their bones have gone back to, the strength necessary or desired after that intervention. I think we don't know really enough about mental health or what the long-term implications of that pubertal blockade are for. I mean, there's been studies about effects on IQ. Um, I think that there's also questions around effects on fertility. So I think a lot of what those patients might need is just a little element of like extra screening and
Right.
like their doctors to be watching and looking for other things. Then you have the patients who were puberty blocked cross-sex hormones. That's a whole nother. Oh, sorry, I forgot other elements of puberty blockade alone. Um, like if you had a young boy who was blocked at Tanner 2, I think fertility wise and growth and making sure all of those hormones like come back online. But then if you're puberty blocked cross-sex hormones, um, I just think we know that there are so many considerable long-term effects that if your doctor doesn't know to monitor for, you don't even know like the risks involved.
Right.
Like,
And if you've had those experiences, how long do you want to be going to a specialized clinic? Maybe you just go in once, you get a clean bill of health, and that's the last time that you're ever there. Maybe you're expected to have annual check-ins, or maybe it's like a colonoscopy. If everything looks clear, come back in 10 years.
but we don't know.
Right, so when you have a gap in knowledge, there are different ways of approaching the closure of that gap that I'm not sure setting up a specific clinic is step one.
So I feel like England does things sort of differently, though. I do feel like they set up these services as like a streamlined like model where they try to build out specialists and they try to refer people in. I mean, that's how Tavistock was set up. It was its own care model.
True.
But it was never care.
Well, okay.
That's the other thing, is that in framing it in such a way, detransition healthcare, you're kind of framing it in a way that trans is, number one, possible, that it's even possible to detransition, which we all know it's not. And you're also framing it in a way that like trans is still healthcare. Like these people would not have to seek solutions for their problems had they not been harmed by the health system already. I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense. Can we just go back to evidence-based interventions and help people who have been harmed?
But we've done these things. Now what are we going to do about it?
Well, exactly. I mean, but I don't think framing it in a way that like Cori said, there's going to be plenty of people who need these services who are going to remain trans identified. And then there's going to be other people who may wish to quote unquote detransition, but like, why would they go to a specialist? It's almost like saying, we experimented on you over here. Now come back and let us experiment with you in another way, another new way. Why would they trust that? Why would they? I mean,
get
I
that.
agree that we need to address the harm that was done, but I think it needs to be taken out of this whole realm that trans is number one, a safe, effective medical intervention to begin with. It needs to just be, how do we help people who are harmed medically?
Okay, but currently in the US, and Cori, you can speak to this better than anyone. It's not like general practitioners all over the US are like, "Oh, sure, you were medicalized in something around gender. Oh, I'd love to see you. I know exactly what you need. I'm here to help." Like that's not what's happening either, though.
No, you get thrown back over to the gender clinic.
And the
Well, because regular doctors who actually understand medicine and the human body, they don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole because they already know that these people have been medically harmed and that there really is very little that we can do outside of maybe balancing someone's hormones. We can't reattach someone's gonads. And they don't want to be responsible for yet another experimental avenue of medicine.
okay, two stories, if I may. Working in a pediatric gender center, the first detransitioner that came to our awareness, the endocrinologist said, I have why would I need to see this person? I don't need to see this person. They're not, I'm an endocrinologist. I prescribe hormones. I'm not prescribing them hormones anymore. I don't need to see them.
Right.
And this person told us on the phone that they believed that they were medically transitioned because they looked the part as a masculine presenting lesbian, and that they believe that they have autism and they said, I asked to be screened for autism at my first visit with the gender center and it never happened. I was never screened, and was kind of asking for that, and was asking also if we knew anything about vocal training to try to bring her voice back up. But the endocrinologist right off the bat was like, why would I see this person? I don't need to see them. They're not on hormones anymore.
Okay, so I would take issue. This endocrinologist is an asshat because endocrinologist's job is not to prescribe hormones.
Yes, it
It is,
is.
it is, no, but it is to have a working understanding of the endocrine system in the body.
No, but yes and no. They prescribe hormones. If you don't have an endocrine condition and you don't need hormones, why do you go to an endocrinologist?
But they do now have an endocrine condition.
Well, no.
Depends.
Okay. It depends. See, the endocrinologists that I worked with adamantly believed, especially like, pediatrics, most of our patients still had their gonads. They believed you just stop. You just stop. There was no, they didn't care. You don't have to titrate down. You can just abruptly just cold turkey stop testosterone. They did not care because, and they're kind of correct about this, there is no true medical emergency. Like, it's not a medical emergency. You're on testosterone as a cosmetic thing. If you don't want to take it anymore, stop taking it. If you're on feminizing hormones and you don't want anymore, just stop taking it. Again, people with gonads. But they never took into account, what is it like to come off testosterone? How long should you taper it? Are you going to feel like a crazy person? And then there was zero conversation about what if somebody had no gonads. Or I will add this, or if somebody had something implanted in their arm, it needs to come out.
Yeah. I'm sure an endocrinologist would take responsibility for removing any implants they added.
Oh, God.
Maybe
No.
I'm naive.
Well, the long story to summarize, a mom wanted one of the puberty blocker implants out, and the dad didn't, and the endocrinologist refused to remove it.
Right, but again, like, what is really the job of endocrinology? Is it just to, just write a script for hormones whenever someone asks for it? No, they should have a working understanding of how those hormones affect the body, how, if someone wants to get off those hormones, how that would affect the body. I mean, that to me is what endocrinology should be about. They should have an understanding of what these things do to the body and how to take people on and off them. And I don't know, maybe just not hand them out like candy to anyone who wants them.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
So we've all been trying to do consciousness raising at the endocrinology conference 2 years
Oh,
in a
yeah.
row. And we
Yeah.
talked to a good number of endocrinologists who would stop and bother to talk with us along the way. And I remember a number of conversations with endocrinologists who have adopted this mindset that their job is to help people realize their true selves, that they're in a position of helping somebody to become. And I don't know that those endocrinologists see themselves as having any sort of role if somebody says, well, I tried it, it's not working for me, I don't want to do it anymore. Because for two reasons. One is it challenges that endocrinologist's judgment because they believed that they were helping somebody achieve some sort of spiritual outcome, deep personal truth. And then that person goes, no. That's I'm a detransitioner now, or whatever label they want to say. The endocrinologist who saw them in the first place for non-medical reasons is going to want to nope out of that because that's not why they provided the services in the first place. But the second thing is that seeing that person as a patient who needs judgments from a professional about how to be healthy is, it's a completely different mindset. So between having their self-doubt about their own judgment and not being able to see this patient group anymore as people who have health concerns, but rather spiritual journeys, like some of these endocrinologists are just, they don't want to be involved.
Yeah, a lot of doctors also, though, they just don't want to be involved in what they see as another doctor's mistake.
Right.
No doctors want to touch. Like, um, I had a patient who had a vaginoplasty out of state and was calling, and they were given, oh, I'm gonna forget the name. I'll look it up later. Silver nitrate, I think, was what they were given to for like wound care, but they come back 5 states and they're back in Missouri and they can get no follow-up care. Nobody would touch them with a 10-foot pole. It was to the point where they were basically ER hopping, like just going to the emergency room to try to see if somebody would follow up for their wound care because no surgeon would even let them come into the office because they're like, no. We didn't do this. We are not taking liability for this error and the fact that you still have an infection and the fact that you still have open wounds. Like, we will not care for this at all. We can't change that whole system. Doctors do not want to take care of other doctors.
Yeah. I will say, I don't know if either of you know this. Canada opened up a clinic specifically for patients who've had complications due to vaginoplasty and phalloplasty. They have a clinic that's only for that.
No, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
That means that the
That's
complication
like everybody.
so high, but the complication rate is so high.
Yeah, that's everybody. There's one clinic that, I mean,
It's not quite everybody, but phalloplasty complication rate, I think, is around 80%.
yeah, that's a lot.
And vaginoplasty complication rates, I think, is around 60 to 70%. It's less than phalloplasty. And again, some of these complications, they range from pretty minor, which minor might just be an aesthetic issue that the patient wants corrected, to major, like you can no longer urinate or defecate.
I mean, I would argue that having had these procedures done is a major complication, no matter how you look at it. I mean, it's it's an injury to the body that is going to cause lifelong problems.
Yeah,
Either
but
way, I mean,
a follow-up procedure like, oh, my labia are uneven. Can you surgically correct that? Versus uh, feces is coming out of my neovagina. Like those cannot be in the same class of complication.
no, Jesus Christ. The fact that the medical world is producing any kind of results like this
Yeah.
is really, it's really disgusting. It just illustrates how little people, I mean, just no care is being given to these people, no matter how they identify.
Yep.
It's not care. It's a human rights abuse.
Sure.
It's just violence.
So, a point of timing. The mattress will be here in 11 minutes because that's how good they're getting now with telling us.
Wow.
So, in 11 minutes, a couple questions. I think this service is necessary, but maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be named this, but I think there does need to be a clinical either pathway or training module, or physicians need a guidance. Like there does need to be something so that doctors can help
Yeah.
patients in
Yeah,
this.
I actually think that all doctors should have to be brought up to speed on how to help any of these patients in terms of the hormones, the surgeries, psychologically, how to even talk to
Yeah.
these people when they come into
Yeah.
your office. I mean, the whole medical system needs an overhaul. I mean, I think that is very, very clear.
So I know this is a challenging question, but I'm throwing it out for consideration for you two and for everybody listening. Who is best positioned right now to understand this patient cohort? Which practitioners are best positioned to understand the cohort?
Oh God, that's a big question.
I mean, unfortunately, I think probably the gender doctors themselves.
Ah,
However, that's like I don't know. I don't know how anybody could trust these people again. I mean, they at least they would know what was done in the first place to help reverse it, but no other doctor has any experience with any of this.
I,
I don't know. I really don't know. Half of me wants to say that these people should not be able to practice medicine ever again. And the other half of me wants them to have to spend the rest of their life caring for the patients that they've harmed.
Specialty services, my answer would be keep them far away from adolescent medicine doctors. They're terrible. Um, I think there should be a group of general endocrinologists who, and this is going to be, I think that the endocrinologists that were trained before uh, the 2000s, the
yeah.
older general endocrinologists might be your best bet. OBGYNs, urologists, general that like didn't go down this pathway, they might, because if the goal is to bring somebody back to like health or homeostasis or something, I would go with somebody like that. But what, I mean, Cori, have you gotten any good care? What do you think?
I'm working on it. We'll see. You have to judge those things retrospectively instead of prospectively. But I'm in a better position than I was a year or two ago. The gender clinician. Let's just model things for a second. This isn't how the real world is, but it helps us think about things in a simple way. Let's imagine that there's two categories of gender clinicians. We're going to say these are people who are doctors, they're physicians of some sort. Let's say they're the ones who are completely principled, and by that I mean their goal is to ensure healthy patient outcomes. that what their patients' personal gender journeys are not that big of a deal or important to the physician. What's more important is that the patient understands the natures of the interventions, that the physician believes that they're necessary to help that patient's mental health state, because that's what the belief used to be. That's the pathology mindset, and that they are doing everything as much as they can by the book to ensure good outcomes, all things considered. And then let's say there's the other group, which is a lot less concerned about health outcomes. They're a lot more concerned about patient satisfaction. That's their metric. And they are less concerned about health crises or anything like that. And they're a lot more concerned that the patients are giving them good scores. Let's say that those two categories exist. And Jamie, I already saw you shaking your head no, that you don't think the first category exists.
I don't think the first category exists.
I do. I think it's dwarfed by the second category, but I think the first category exists. So
Maybe.
you're saying that your premise doesn't even make sense. That's what you're telling me.
I didn't work with any of them.
Yeah.
Maybe they exist. The first thing that came to mind is I feel like you're trying to describe like a Scott Leibowitz.
Well, I'm not attributing any individuals to these
I know,
categories.
but
I'm just
like I
defining
feel
the
like
categories.
there are people who try to claim like, yeah, but go ahead. If these two categories exist, who is the best one for this type of care?
Well, not between those two who's the best, but I will say if the first ones exist, they're probably in a good position to help with long-term care for people who've been through medicalization procedures. Whatever their identity is, that long-term care component, they're probably in a good position to supply it.
If they exist, then maybe. I'm not holding my breath. I did see some peripheral specialty care providers that I do feel like sort of fit that bill. There were a couple reproductive endocrinologists. If you aren't aware that there's this specialty within the specialty, but the reproductive endocrinologists who are the ones who do like all of the IVI and the IVF, and they're the ones you go to if you want to get pregnant. I did work with a number of them who were concerned about these kids' like fertility preservation, and like they are really experts in the endocrine system and kind of how it's functioning well. I think that if you're looking for how to build a couple detransition teams, if the UK wants to build a couple of those teams, they have to have a reproductive endocrinologist on there who understands all of the fertility impacts that have happened. You have to have an amazing urology surgeon, an OBGYN surgeon. Like you have to have like some of the best in their fields because these are serious surgical complications that need real assistance. But I think the thing that I would come back to is how is the National Health Service going to just provide these services and are they just going to ignore who did the harm in the first place?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Like what happens to the
Are they going to
doctors?
collect the info and be like, this is the surgeon that cut you up, and we're just going to pretend like it didn't happen?
Exactly. That's, yeah.
Some of those surgeons might be the most skilled at undoing the harm.
Oh, God, Cori, you're so okay. Oh,
I am unlucky in that I say things that I think are obvious, but cause people a lot of discomfort.
No, he's right. I mean, how many surgeons have experience with vaginoplasties at all or phalloplasties at all? I mean, another surgeon would not even know where to start to undo or correct. Oh, I guess her bed got here.
I think it's that this conversation is so uncomfortable that she has to leave.
Maybe she just had to pee.
Yeah, that happens a lot at her age.
Yeah. Oh, God. I hope she doesn't listen to this afterwards.
Yeah, there's no chance.
No, I think it's a really tough. I just have a feeling that the whole medical community is going to want to pretend this whole mess never happened.
Well, Lauren, when you say the whole community, do you mean, are you saying there won't be pockets of people who actually do care and that they
No,
do want to?
I think there are pockets of people who do care. And it's much different here than it is in the UK. Like here, we have to not only do we have to have qualified physicians and specialty and specialists who care and want to help, but we also have to have a way to bill that through insurance. So we have to make up insurance codes for all of this stuff. I mean, it's a whole fucking mess.
Yeah.
And so even the doctors who want to help, they some of them, that I don't think they know where to start, and they don't know how to get compensated for the work that they've done, and also they are just guessing as well, because this is a whole cohort of people that have been largely ignored by the medical community. So they have very little research to go on, very little experience. So this is going to be a whole new field of medicine that isn't currently supported by,
Yeah.
it's not financially supported. It's not supported by insurance billing and coding. I
Right.
mean, this is a huge undertaking.
Right. It's not institutionalized.
No, it's not institutionalized at all. So I think at first what we're going to see are little pockets of physicians and specialty specialists that are trying to help and are going to hit brick walls every which way and are going to have to do their own essentially experimentation, which is what started this whole mess to begin with. So I don't know.
Well,
I
let me
don't have the
float an
answers.
idea. I'm gonna pivot a little bit and ask you a question. If we had a lot of confidence and literacy in the concept of medical ethics, which we really haven't, even in this conversation, we haven't talked about medical ethics very much. But if we had fluency in the idea of medical ethics, do you think that it would be possible for us to say, well, ethical MDs that are in this space should be allowed to continue operating in it, and ones that we judge as unethical, who've had, we can review their records and we can say their practices, their patient treatment has been unethical. They are excluded from this. But we're going to take all the ones that we've judged to be ethical and have them continue working with these patient groups with the mindset that everybody who's been through this requires some long-term care.
Well, first, who's going to
if,
decide who's the ethical ones?
but do you think that we have the fluency to even talk about that?
No, I really don't. I'm so disillusioned with the medical community. I don't, because we had at the SEGM conference there were a number of bioethicists there, and they did speak a lot about the idea of autonomy in a medical setting and what performs as medical autonomy in 2025 in America has absolutely nothing to do with what medical autonomy in terms of medical ethics was ever supposed to be. I mean, it was literally supposed to be a patient has a right to refuse treatment. It was never about patients being able to opt into whatever treatment that they wanted based on their identity. So I think we've come so far afield that like even even people in the medical field don't understand the basics of medical ethics. Like just basic tenets of medical ethics.
I
Do
don't,
no
I don't,
harm.
I'm not sure I have fluency. I have some familiarity, but I don't think I have fluency. But it's just my guess. But I think that if we had fluency, this conversation would be a lot different. But I think since we don't have the fluency, but we have the intuition, right? We have the senses, but we don't have the vocabulary. We are morally repelled by the harms that have happened. We do not want to endorse any sort of continuation of those harms. And
Right, and
we
I
have,
just fear that institutionalizing, like especially like the way you said, like
yeah,
institutionalizing detransition is just going to kind of continue harms just with a new name.
yes. And that's because I will posit that we don't have a good ability to even describe what a medical harm is at the moment.
No, no, we clearly do not. I mean,
Because it's become so muddy about what is even, I guess Jamie raised this question, we haven't even addressed it. What is health?
right.
Like we have it's become so muddy to be able to answer that question, that to say in a healthcare context, what do patients who have been medicalized need separately from the gender clinics?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I say frequently even if we stopped performing medical transitions today, we would have 50, 60 years of fallout to deal with.
Oh, yeah, probably more.
At least, yeah, at least, right? Because like people are going to get old,
Right.
and right now we're medicalizing 8, 9, 10-year-olds.
That's right. And hopefully they are long lived, but it's all going to depend on how harmful these interventions have been.
Right, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what does trans elder care look like. I mean,
Now we have a little bit. You've probably heard the stories before of people who have had surgical interventions. When they
yeah.
start experiencing dementia, they have forgotten that they had had those interventions, and
Well,
they
I've
get
heard
very
it's more
confused why
than,
their bodies have been changed.
but it's more than just forgotten they have had those interventions. They forget their entire trans identity.
Right.
Like so I mean, right now, how are those people being treated? Are they being told when they wake up that no, you're wrong, you're actually a woman or you're actually a man? And
Yeah.
I mean, this is like nightmare scenario for people who have dementia or Alzheimer's. I mean, this is terrible.
I'd say it's really nightmare scenario for their carers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we didn't solve the problem today.
No.
Again.
But what can we do? What can we do? I think the best thing that we can do, or the only thing that we can do, is try to help work on the problem definition, which I don't think, just from the very fact that they're using this framing of detransition services, there's still more work to be done on the problem definition.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think also like having an entire section of I mean this is the UK, so the NHS calling itself a detransition services, it then implies that you can transition, that you can change your sex, and that only some people are having complications when in reality anyone who's been through the medical system for transition has been harmed.
That's right. I wonder, when we look at the whole list of services that are provided in the transition context, which include things which might surprise people, like vocal training and hairstyling and wardrobe assistance. Obviously, they didn't have that back when I was starting. Um, thank you. The do we think that detransitioners are also going to, like, you're still speaking a little gay. You need to like have more
Yeah, butch it
firmness
up a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, drop it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Or
Or
I know
fem it up a little
testosterone's,
bit. Yeah.
what's that?
Or fem it up a little bit
Oh yeah,
for,
fem
yeah.
up a little bit. You need to end
Jesus.
all your sentences with a question. You need to get better
There's
at
going to be
upspeak.
services teaching vocal fry.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would be
I mean, this is where it could go. I mean,
I
I
know.
don't discount anything. I mean, because we're just living in the fucking upside down right now. So
That's right.
anything's possible.
Right. If the mirror image of the transition service
Right.
manifests,
that's what,
that's
exactly. And that's what we do not want. We
That's
don't want.
right. The emphasis has to be not on readapting as a member of your natal sex. It has to be wholly on your healthcare outcomes.
Yeah,
And
holistic
therapy,
healthcare outcomes.
probably.
Yes, exactly. But
Anyway.
still, they're stuck in this framing, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is.
Well, it seems pretty obvious to me that Jamie has had her bed set up and that she's taking a nap in it.
Yeah. I actually don't know whether we can end the interview or if she has to end it. So maybe we just stare at each other lovingly until she comes back. That was very sassy.
All right. Are you doing anything for Nevada Day?
What the hell is Nevada Day?
What do you mean, what the hell's Nevada Day? How come everybody says that to me?
You mean
October
Halloween?
31st.
Halloween?
People hand out candy, they get dressed up in fancy dress. It's for Nevada Day.
Yeah, I'll probably go trick-or-treating later.
Okay.
I have a
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo costume in addition to my Ninja Turtle mask. So,
Yeah.
what about yourself?
Well, this is the one day a year that I can dress up like a woman and nobody tries to guess if I have any hidden motivations.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, well that's gonna wrap, I guess, this segment, folks, and we're gonna come back with Glenna, talk a little bit about Kansas.
Oh, we are.
And yeah, I think we're gonna talk about Kansas and Texas.
Hi, welcome to Informed Dissent. We have a guest today who we'd like to have her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Glenna Goldis. I'm a lawyer in New York, and I have a Substack called Bad Facts about the trans legal movement. I'm also a founder of Gender Critical Law Society for lawyers and law students who want to fight against gender identity in law.
How's that going?
Good. We just organized a letter to the highest court in Massachusetts about pronoun use because we are launching a campaign to get everyone in America the right to use the pronouns they want to use when they're in court. And when I say use pronouns, I mean say them. I don't mean dictate their own to other people. So we have a problem in America with judges forcing people to use preferred pronouns, whether it's litigants or lawyers, or putting pressure on them to do so. We have judges forcing other judges to use preferred pronouns of sex offenders. And so we are organizing an effort to tell them what the law is, tell them why what they're doing is actually unconstitutional. It's robbing people in their courtrooms of the right to free speech and the right to a fair trial, because you have all these witnesses who are barely even able to talk because they're stumbling over these pronoun rules.
That's excellent. And that is going to apply primarily an effort in Massachusetts first that you want to maybe see if you can reproduce?
Yeah, exactly. We started in Massachusetts because the two founders, myself and Elspeth Cipher, have a connection to that state. I started my career there in legal services representing domestic violence victims. And Elspeth Cipher, until recently, was a justice on the Supreme Judicial Court. So she's retired from their highest court in Massachusetts. So she was sending this to her old colleagues there.
Excellent. Okay. Well, maybe we'll have you come back if you get a response or to kind of update any other things that the Gender Critical Law Society, did I get that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, is going to have in the pipeline. So today we wanted to have you come and talk about two, maybe three legal issues that we've been seeing, just kind of moving around a little bit this last week or two. So at the end of the last episode we recorded, we found out that something had developed in Texas, that the Texas Attorney General had put out a press release talking about a doctor there. And then we found out that she was moving to Oregon, which I think confused a little bit of Twitter at first. So can you maybe give us some insight? What the hell is going on between these two states?
Sure, yeah, we're talking about Dr. May Lau, who was in Texas, now in Oregon. So Texas passed a law a couple years ago barring barring doctors from engaging in pediatric gender medicine, whatever you want to call it. They can't be injecting kids with blockers and cross-sex hormones or conducting surgery on them for gender purposes. And that went into effect last year. They did well in court, by the way. The ACLU sued, but then ended up dropping their suit, and it would have been wiped out by Scarmetti anyway. So, it's on solid footing there. The law goes into effect, and some doctors, including Dr. Lau, flouted it. So Dr. Lau was especially flagrant, and at first she was prescribing testosterone kind of in excess amounts before the law went into effect. So it looked like people could kind of refill those prescriptions later on. But then she was even more blatant than that in violating the law. She just kept practicing. So the law goes into effect, says you cannot be prescribing testosterone to teenage girls. And there's no other medical purpose. It's not like, it's not ambiguous. And same with puberty blockers for a 15-year-old, like that's too old for them. So it's, there's not really a question of what she's doing. Most of the kids, at least that are tracked by the state, were girls. So they found 21 girls ages 14 to 17, a whole bunch of them, 14 and 15, who Dr. Lau prescribed testosterone to illegally, it seems, according to Texas. And then there's also a boy who she prescribed, I think, blockers and hormones to. And in the boy's case, there was also fraudulent medical billing, saying that it was an endocrine disorder, when the proper diagnosis code would be something like gender identity. At least on paper, that's the proper thing. I don't know. But and then for the girls, she listed some of them as boys on their records, so that could be another kind of fraud. So the Texas Attorney General's office filed a lawsuit against her a year ago, and they documented this. So these are all allegations that I'm reciting here that the Texas AG has made. And again, this is a lot of people. It's not just like one slip up. It's 21 girls and one boy. So they sue her for violating this particular law, and also for deception and fraud related to the billing practices and calling them the opposite sex, and things like that. So that lawsuit went in. And it's hard to track these cases in state court in Texas. I can't, at least I haven't been able to find a way to track it the way I do in federal court. So it just burst out into the news like a week or so ago because Lau was giving up her medical license in Texas. So at first we were all excited, like, oh yay, she's not practicing medicine anymore. But then she pops back up in Oregon. She goes, haha, I'm in Oregon now.
Was this some kind of ultimatum they gave her? Like, you either surrender your medical license or we're prosecuting?
See, this is where it's murky as to what happened. The AG in his press release said that his lawsuit is still ongoing. So it's not like she gave it up in order to resolve all the charges against her, but it's unclear what is still pending. I'm sure that she raised arguments herself, which she kind of alluded to in a statement. So there's some sort of conflict is still going on in the courts, I believe. I think it's probably public, but not easy to access. So all we know is that she is in Oregon now. She cannot practice in Texas, but she can practice in Oregon.
So she's practicing in Oregon, doing the same things that she was doing illegally in Texas, and Oregon has no problem with someone who flagrantly breaks the law.
That seems to be
retaining their medical license. Okay,
great.
Yeah,
so just for legal background, just in general, we tend to regulate the professions at the state level in America. So, as a lawyer, I could like move from state to state, but the new state's going to ask me like, "Hey, anything happen in New York?" Like when I log in Oregon or wherever, try to get a new license. And that's like typically how things go. And that's what you'd expect to happen here. She shows up in Oregon. She's like, "Hey, I gotta confess to you guys that there's a legal trouble in Texas." But there's another layer going on for her in Oregon, which is that Oregon passed a shield law or a sanctuary law, which many, if not all, of the more liberal states have done recently regarding youth gender medicine. So that law says that the Oregon Medical Board cannot deny her a license based on a conviction or any kind of discipline in Texas related to their law. So if she was doing something in Texas that is legal under Oregon law, then they can't deny her the license. And they can't be like, "Hey, that's kind of sketchy how you happily broke the law." And like, "Oh, why is Texas so upset about this practice?" No, none of that. It's like, we love youth gender medicine. We're going to protect you. We're going to make sure the medical board cannot deny you the right to practice here. So that
Okay.
seems to be what's happening.
I'm no legal scholar, but isn't there something in the Constitution about states respecting other states' laws? Like, my driver's license is valid in all 50 states and something like that, right?
So there definitely are principles like that, like the full faith and credit clause in the Constitution, but there's a tension because we also let states kind of regulate themselves. And that's an issue that's always been alive in our country, like setting that balance between how much autonomy do we want the states to have and then how much we want them to respect each other. And that is all being tested right now with these sanctuary laws. And this is just one very exciting example. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more litigation. I've written about these laws a few times in the past. I think they are extremely complicated. And while I can kind of generate hypotheticals about where they would go wrong and generate lawsuits, uh, I've always said that we really need to see just how they play out in practice, because like things are going to come up that we didn't even imagine. And this is a prime example. That somebody lost their license in Texas, like, should be career death. And she's just
Right.
resurrected in another part of the
Right.
country.
I can't imagine in any other medical circumstance where someone surrenders their medical license for breaking the law in their state and then another state would, I mean, just with open arms say, "Hey, yeah, come on in. That's great."
Yeah. No,
I
and
really can't imagine another scenario
Well,
outside of
abortion.
Abortion.
So a lot
Okay.
of times
That's a
these
good
laws
point.
actually include abortion and youth gender medicine, and they
Mm.
protect them in similar or analogous ways. And they hit the abortion button hard when they're selling it to the public because in the blue states, um, abortion rights are very popular. And so that's like the headline, and then they squeeze the gender stuff into.
So I want to jump back to something that you said because I didn't actually realize this was part of her getting in trouble. Um, do you know exactly how much she was prescribing when you said kind of she was over prescribing? Was it just like a side note?
Oh, I meant that she was prescribing like for the future, I think, so that the people I think would be able to refill them later on.
Okay.
But I can
So,
get you the complaint is public, so I can send you
okay.
that if you want like the exact milliliters and everything.
Well, I think this is so interesting because even before these laws were coming into effect, so correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Arkansas the first?
Yes.
So and what year was it? Do you remember?
21?
Okay. So I'm working in, everybody probably knows this. I worked in a pediatric gender center. Okay. I was clearly there when that first law we started to hear these grumblings of states that were going to start bans. And at a certain point, for our prescribers, testosterone is a controlled substance. And there's a couple rules about prescribing. So if we're prescribing in Missouri and a kid goes to Florida, we can't call in a refill to Florida if they like are on vacation. Controlled substance, we can't cross state lines with it. But testosterone comes in a vial if you're injecting. Okay. So it comes in a vial. And there is enough liquid in that vial to get 4 to maybe 6 doses out of it. but you can write it in such a way that you call that vial a single-use vial. So, okay, are you following me so far? Have you ever, anybody?
Yes.
They're calling it single use, but you can spread it
So
out.
you crack it open, you pull up your first shot, you give yourself your shot. We would basically tell the kids like wink wink like, okay, don't throw it away. Now, the next time you wipe off the top with an alcohol pad, you pull out another. You do it again and again and again. You can get 4 to 6 weeks out of the one vial, but we're going to prescribe it like it's single use, which means we're going to give you 4 vials in each month, which means I'm going to write you a script for a year that's going to last you for 4 years. Like that's how much testosterone we could give somebody even in like normal times when there's not even bans going on. So,
That's crazy. That's like someone being able to write a script for a year's worth of OxyContin.
oh, it was so speed up, and then we're 2023, the Free Press article, then Missouri passes law. They start having these parents in like the local news, like, oh, we have stockpiles. We've been stockpiling to like get through circumstances like this. And there's one picture, and this mom like opens a cabinet, and it's just lines and lines and lines and boxes of testosterone. And I was like, first of all, you went to my clinic, and second of all, you probably have like 8 years worth of testosterone like sitting there because we had been prescribing it that way the whole time along. Like when you see like pumping parties of these kids, like we're all gonna do a shot of tea at a party. Like there's so much testosterone out there, peripheral, whatever the word is, because that's how these clinics prescribe it. They're oozing testosterone.
God, this is so ridiculous. I mean, it's
Control.
basically steroids.
It is a steroid. Yes. Glenna, I think one of her early tweets out there was, yes.
Yeah, I have a long article about that. And when we say steroids, we mean anabolic steroids. I have had liberal friends argue with me that they were prescribed steroids and it was no big deal. They're talking about corticosteroids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So our doctor friend is now firmly in Oregon.
That's the latest reporting we have. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any idea where she went? Because I would be so amused if she packed up her whole life in Texas, moved to Oregon to go work in a hospital there, and then the new Trump HHS rules are going to come online in like 3 months and all the hospitals are going to close.
Well, Oregon has like more funding for this than anywhere else. So I'm sure she could set up a clinic and get the state to just like pay her even more. I mean, I'm making stuff up, but maybe.
Okay, so I just mentioned the HHS rules. Did you see that story in
Yes, I think I know what you're referring to. I haven't like done the deep dive on them, but this is what we've been waiting for, right? Where they're saying if your hospital practices pediatric gender medicine, then you don't get any federal funding, including for research, for anything.
Medicaid dollars, Medicare dollars? Yeah, all of that. Yes. We'll see what happens when that comes online. So, were there any other doctors that you know of in Texas that were being prosecuted or looked at over this?
Yeah, there were a few others who were mentioned, but I think they either backed down or it was just something. Like she was the big target. I think there was one other who was maybe lost their license at some point.
Okay.
But
So, do we know of any other states that are actually enforcing their ban laws like Texas is?
are they punishing people? I have not heard of any other prosecutions. It seems like the Texas AG is especially strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this could essentially be happening in any of the 27 states that there are bans. And if they're not actively looking for these people, like how are they catching these people? They have to be combing over insurance data, right? I mean, they have to be on top of like wherever their prescription writing. It sounds like kind of a lot. Like you'd have to have a whole task force to actually police this.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to
Yeah.
create a new unit, you need attorneys. So,
Yeah.
Texas is a big state and they decided to make this a priority.
But I don't know of any other ban states where in the law itself there was the requirement that they set up something like that to do the enforcement.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not even sure if they all have punishment backed in. I'm just not sure.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. Sometimes in some of the states, they would put jail time or the loss of license, and oftentimes in the negotiations, that would be withdrawn towards the end, that the punishment part would be removed.
Well, then how does the law have teeth at all if there's no punishment?
No, exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
It's really, I mean, in the past, you would hope that professionals are just they're very sensitive to the idea that they would be doing anything illegal, and so you just wouldn't go anywhere near it for that reason. But in the times we live in, these doctors are so self-righteous. They
Yeah.
believe they're above the law. They think that-
times in this magical time that we live in. Yes, in these times.
But no, I mean, it's a huge deal. From a legal perspective, it's all just a huge deal, what we've been talking about, that we have people who think they're above the law. We have other states that are telling them, yes, you are above your state's law. We hate your
Yeah.
state. Like, this is a breakdown of society. This is a challenge to our Constitution. Like, these sanctuary laws could lead to, they're going to be a part of potentially like a civil war. I'm not to be dramatic about it, but at least like a lot of escalation of hostilities.
Well, the sanctuary states and the ban states do have some geographical element to them. I mean, when you look at the actual map, I believe most of the sanctuary states are northern coastal, and I'm trying to pull up a map, and most of the ban states are Midwest and the South. Does that seem like the right kind of map that I'm thinking of?
Yeah, you're telling me that I'm going to be a part of Canada within a couple of years.
Good luck if you'd like to go to Canada. The Canadians, I don't know if you know what's her name? Rowan Yeti Knox, what's her name? The woman who lives in Canada who had trans-identified kids.
Yes.
Her spouse became trans-identified and he ran off to a polycule, and then she decided to join him, and now she's also trans. This is maybe unimportant news, but on Facebook this week she announced that she had her top surgery. So if you become part of Canada, you will get to pay for crazy pants having her.
Well, I live in New York City, so I'm going to be paying to fly in kids from the rest of the country to cut their boobs off. And so everyone knows, the guy who's in the lead for mayor here has promised to spend $65 million of New York City tax dollars to fly in kids from around the country who are in banned states so that they can receive their quote unquote care in our very expensive hospitals and hotels.
So then is he going to also pay those hospitals all of their Medicaid and Medicare lost dollars if the HHS rule goes into effect?
I'm sure if you asked him, he would say yes. I don't see on what grounds he would say no.
Apparently socialists just print money. Is that what happens?
Look, I am from the economic left, and that's one piece where I thought it was interesting that
the economic left
was
where
getting
we
traction,
print money.
but and I don't normally I don't focus on the money aspect of pediatric gender medicine because obviously the moral harms are a lot worse than the financial ones. But this is very comical, and this is especially when you're talking about like on the national level, the money is really not making a difference. But at the local level, maybe if you decide to transition every kid from a conservative state and put them up in your hotels, then okay, then maybe the money starts to add up. I don't know.
These
I
states with these sanctuary laws and these shield laws are going to end up being leper colonies with that are completely bankrupt.
I think the last holdouts are going to be Oregon, Washington State, Illinois, Colorado, New York, Vermont.
Vermont,
New York on the ground is not that crazy. It's all just a bunch
not
of
yet,
people.
not yet.
I mean, I don't know. And granted, it's not like my friends are a representative sample of New York State, but like, first of all, outside the city is like, a lot more conservative. Inside the city, people are saying like, Glenna, just calm down. It's all gonna blow over soon. Like nobody's saying to me, Glenna is really good to cut off the breasts of young lesbians. Like, I don't know who these people are who supposedly support this stuff. I just know people who are quiet about it in public.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. In a similar state, though, Illinois is a very similar state. If you asked somebody from most of the rural swaths of Illinois, they would say, hell no, we don't support this at all. But it's still going to be one of the last holdouts because of Chicago. I mean,
Yeah. And it's the leaders.
it's the leaders, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we sweep in somebody like Mamdani because we don't like landlords, which is valid. But then he brings with it the like, by the way, we're going to ship people in from Alabama for mastectomies. Like, and the media, the media has been really complicit with him and others on the left. They never raise the question of trans issues. So even when they start to bubble to the surface, like, you have somebody like Maud Marin, who is one of the good guys on our side, who, in a very reasonable way has brought it up when appropriate. Like the media doesn't run with it. They almost suppress it because they know. They know they're
Because
on
it sounds
side.
crazy.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, okay, so I gotta amend my statement. I said, I don't know who in New York supports this stuff. It's the entire staff of the New York Times.
Yeah.
It's like, that's it.
That's an interesting. Okay. Let's segue before we dig ourselves a giant hole at the New York Times and they will never call us again. Kansas. What's going on in Kansas?
Oh, I don't know what's going on in Kansas. Do you know what's going on in Kansas?
Well, it's going to be the first trial
Right.
post Skirmetti. The ACLU challenged the Kansas law. How does this change? I'm being completely sincere. I've been part of some of these trials pre-Skirmetti when the ACLU or Lambda Legal, they challenge the ban and then it has a hearing and then the judges and the state courts decide if the ban is going to be enforced or not, or what does this change in this kind of challenge now that Skirmetti has been decided? Can the state of Kansas's court still rule that the law should not go into effect?
Yeah, I believe that this lawsuit was brought under Kansas law and the Kansas Constitution. So Skirmetti was about the federal Constitution. So the ACLU is asking the judge in Kansas to say, hey, our Constitution is more protective of quote unquote trans rights. And also the parental rights issue was not resolved in the Supreme Court. And I think logically it has no legs, but I think that might be part of the suit as well in Kansas. So they're telling it, and I hate to be reductive, but what they're saying is like, hey, Kansas Constitution should be more liberal than the US Constitution. I don't see this as liberal, but that's like in a really shorthand version.
But can a state, like, what happens when a state's constitution is in conflict with the federal constitution? I mean, that's crazy.
Well, it's not exactly a conflict because the federal version just says we don't care what kind of bans you pass related to trans care. That's just like not a federal constitutional issue. And the state is saying, oh, we care.
Okay.
We're going to stop you from passing law. So,
Okay.
and Montana's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Flush that out a little bit more. So the federal government, Skirmetti was basically them saying, it is not against your constitutional rights that the state bans this.
Yeah.
Well, they're saying that the state has a right to regulate medical procedures, correct?
Yeah. And there's no
Like, in
special carve out
general.
for quote unquote trans people. Yeah. Or, well, actually, what they said, the majority said that it was not anti-trans discrimination, this particular law, which is dubious. Like 3 of the conservative justices concurred and said, no, come on, if this is this is talking about trans people. Like, if we believe trans is a real concept, which they all do, unfortunately, then this is trans discrimination, but it's still not unconstitutional. But what the majority holding is just saying it's not even discrimination at all. So the difference in Kansas would be they're saying, well, under Kansas law, we are looking at this as discrimination. Like, we're just applying a different analysis under a different constitution.
How very different is each state's constitution from our US Constitution?
Usually not much. So if you look at, for example, like, something like free speech rights is typically the same everywhere. The states will say, they'll use language like, oh, it's our free speech clause is coextensive with the First Amendment. Or they'll use like different Latin terms, which all mean like, we pay attention to what's going on at the federal level. But, we're starting to see that shift. So New York amended its constitution last year to add gender identity to its discrimination provisions. In the past, the courts used to find our equal protection clause is the same as the federal. They really can't now because of how changed all the language is in that section. And we just don't know how that's going to play out. And so this is another example where we're going to see a departure. We could see a departure in some state constitutions from the federal version, where the judges in those states just have to make up their own analysis that's separate.
Okay. I think I have one more question for you for this go round for our legal briefing from an intelligent attorney. How many years is it going to take to get gender ideology out of our laws and therefore out of our lives?
So I think that, of course, there's all these different tentacles, right? So prison is like its own area of law. But a few things. One, I think that there are these gender identity provisions in a lot of state law, which everyone, even on our side, they make this mistake. They interpret the gender identity discrimination law to mean that you have to pretend the men are women if they say they're women. But if you read the text literally, they don't say that. They say you can't discriminate against somebody for saying they have a funny gender identity. It doesn't say you have to treat them as though they are the gender identity they say. And that is just a plain reading of the text. So unfortunately, states have gone different ways. So Minnesota just had a bad decision about powerlifting, where they said, they read it to mean you have to pretend the man is a woman. That's what gender identity discrimination is. And so that's wrong, but it's going to be really hard to uproot that from Minnesota law because the Supreme Court just said that. New York, on the other hand, has a women's sports case moving through its courts where so far it's gone well, where they're reading it the way I do to say, no, you're not discriminating against this guy by saying he has to play with the men. What that is technically is sex discrimination. They're discriminating against him because he's male, and that is legal under discrimination law. There are these carve-outs where you allow sex discrimination for things like sports and bathrooms. So so there are some states that almost overnight could just, like, you have court decisions where they read it the way I say they should, the way New York is reading it so far. And then even though gender identity is still, those words are still on the books, they're just totally defanged. They just mean, okay, you're allowed to say you have a gender identity and that's it. Like, but if you have more state Supreme Court decisions like Minnesota is reading it the wrong way, then they are stuck in there. And then you need the legislature to, maybe pass a constitutional amendment, which takes at least a few years. Every state has its own process. Maybe voters get involved, and that would be messy.
And that costs millions of dollars.
Yeah, right. I guess, yeah, because you lobby for them. Yes, it's an outrage, just the amount of energy and money that will have to be spent. I mean, that's why we're all fighting this on all cylinders, legal, legislative, but also culturally, because if you can just get everyone to stop wanting to transition, that would be very useful. And that would be, so that's why we try to attack things on all fronts. I mean, with the schools, oh God, I mean, it's in the curriculum and it's hard to legislate one way or another about curriculum. And then we have all these teachers who are, some of the biggest activists in our society who are just determined to push this on kids. And it's a hard, gender identity is a hard thing. It's apparently impossible for the other side to define, as we've seen. But then because they haven't defined it, it's hard for us to define to say like this should not be taught, this should not be part of discrimination law, whatever. So like all sides are caught up in this whirlwind of like no words being appropriate. And somehow, even though the other guys should be the ones who lose every time because they can't define gender identity, somehow we're the ones. Like, the president keeps getting attacked because, some law isn't, some order of his might not be specific enough in their opinion about what gender identity is. It's like, oh, now you care about having a specific definition of gender identity.
I actually think that the UK is having similar issues. The law that they had, well, the court case that they had about, men have to actually use the men's bathroom. Women have the right to their own bathroom. I think that it was just announced, and I'm trying to scroll to look at it, but they're rules forcing, well, this is the headline that I would not have written. Rules forcing trans people to use birth sex facilities, again, delayed. I think they're having a really hard time even figuring out how to carry it out once once they got the win that they got.
Yeah.
So short answer, if you have to give me how many years until we win, I will be dead. Is that the short answer? Oh
Yeah,
God,
I think
she's
the
not.
remnants of gender identity will be in the law for a while, long time. New York, I mean, it's in the Constitution. Hopefully it'll be defanged and be meaningless, but yeah, it's in there. I mean, luckily, what we can say is federal law is pretty clean. It's in the hate crimes law, and I think Violence Against Women Act, but that's it. So thanks to litigation filed against the Biden administration because they were trying to worm it in. But federal law, and then there are some ways where maybe they can find that the state law is conflicting with the federal law, which would be good. Maybe we can have lawsuits from other angles. For example, if you sue the business for pretending they have a women's bathroom when they don't because they're letting men into it, then that puts pressure on the business community, and then we can kind of, and we've seen insurance companies get pulled into the fray where they're saying they don't want to pay for the so-called trans care. And so that is great whenever a business can be galvanized because they have more money than we do. And from what I've heard of those litigations, they're very strong. They have expert witnesses and they pay top dollar and they put all the time that's necessary into them because they're wealthy and this is the financially important to them. So if we can find ways to show business or make business think that
Or we can just
not
find,
Americans.
or we can just find a socialist to print us money,
Mm-hmm.
then we would be okay.
Yeah, you're going to run for office in St. Louis.
Everybody hates me.
No, look, the Democratic Party is very weak, and it can be taken over by socialists who are anti-trans bigot. I don't know. Like,
First, I gotta find a gay bar that'll serve me a drink, and then we'll see if.
Funny thing, I've actually been realizing lately that the gay people are outnumbered by straight people
in the gay bars.
Did you know that? Did you know
Yeah.
that? We can make allies in the straight community.
In our okay. Well, Glenna, it is always lovely to see you. We hope that you will make it a regular point to come back around when we have legal questions that we could make up the answer to when we really should just go right to a lawyer and ask a lawyer.
Well, thank you for having me. Of course, I love to talk to you guys about the law. It's a lot of fun.
All right. In the show notes, we will put where people can find you, find your Substack, find the Gender Critical Law Society, and find you on X. Yes?
Yeah, great.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great Halloween.
You too.